What's going on, you guys, and welcome back to the channel, where today we're talking about Rise to Honor, starring Jet Li. Now, admittedly, I don't know much about this game in terms of whether this was popular, something that everybody knew about and or had, or if it was more of a hidden gem sort of situation. Nor can I really think of any real special childhood stories behind it, other than I grew up a pretty massive Jackie Chan fan. So I am in no way a stranger to the martial arts action films that inspired this, and it was exactly the sort of thing that I would have gravitated to spend my monthly allowance on. And it's presented exactly like that. From top to bottom, this thing feels like a Jet Li movie from the early 2000s, right down to its chapter select screen, which is made to mimic that of a DVD, which I personally thought was a nice little detail. In terms of story, I would say that there's really only enough plot to keep you engaged and motivated to play through it. But it is very action orientated, and pretty much non-stop once it starts. You're constantly bouncing from the I would say four gameplay types. You got your beat 'em up sections, you got your shooting sections, your stealth, and then your evasion sections, which is pretty much just avoiding being gunned down by helicopters and whatnot. Real action movie type stuff. And then all of those sections are broken up by cutscenes, which, by the way, are treated as their own individual chapters within the selection screen. So again, as I said, this game moves incredibly quickly. But then we get to the control scheme, which this game is kind of famous for. It's as simplistic as it is wonky. Pretty much what we have here is any combination, really, of the shoulder buttons and the right analog stick. Um, Face buttons have no presence here, really, whatsoever. And as a kid, I thought that this had to have been one of the hardest games I'd ever played. I'm not really sure why, but I sincerely had great difficulty wrapping my brain around the concepts of blocking and countering. Pretty much all I knew about the game, all I understood in plain English, was how to throw and whoop ass in a general sense. But as you can imagine, that strategy didn't really get me too far in the end. Now, playing it as an adult who obviously paid a little bit more attention this time around, obviously understood at least the basic elements of the game's inner workings, um, I would still say that it feels very wonky and is very difficult to master. And I suppose that this is the section where, in full transparency, I tell you that the title of this video includes partial playthrough because the controls ultimately made me tap out. I would say in the home stretch of the game, I couldn't have had more than 4 or 5 levels max. I was almost there, I can tell you that much. But there is a particular fight in there that did nothing but show to me, but prove to me how woefully inconsistent this control scheme is whenever you need it the most, whenever your life depends on it. I'm talking about when you're white knuckling the controller, sweating to beat hell, fighting for your life. It just decides not to work. It leaves you hanging. It lets you down. And this is exactly the type of game where those simple little mistakes will get you killed without a shadow of a doubt. And, I remember looking up a video, a walkthrough, just to see if there was something that I was missing, if there was some level of cheese or manipulation that I could do to get, through it or whatever. And all of the normal people that I watched do it were pretty much using the same strategy, the strategy that I was using. So I was like, okay, well maybe I'll just do what I've been doing and until I get lucky, sort of thing. Then I came across this one guy who basically beat it by standing in one spot and doing the most ridiculous move. Now, I should mention that there is no combo list or any sort of direction as to how to perform specific combat moves or anything like that. So I had never seen um, um, this particular move, crowd controlling move. Um, didn't know it was in a game, much less how to even do it. So watching this really just melted any real confidence or any real sense of competence in terms of really feeling like I was getting the hang of it and could hold my own in combat. And I just really lost all hope after that. So I did put in a cheat code to unlock all the chapters in the game. And I did make it to the end. I did see the end of the game. And I know there's people out there that are gonna complain and say that it doesn't count. But I did it. I don't care. I don't feel bad about it. And I don't mind the game's difficulty and kind of the old school game mentality of no pickups, right? You just survive. Just get through the level based on your own merits, your own understanding of how the game works and your play style and all of that. Um, Especially when you stop to consider the length of the game. I would say conservatively about the time that I waved the white flag, I was probably somewhere in the 5 to 8 hour, maybe 10 hour mark. But I've seen it. I've seen videos of it being beaten in the 2 to 3 hour range. So obviously you got to do something to get your difficulty and your game padding there. Otherwise, people are going to breeze right through it and complain that it was much too easy and kind of a waste of time and money. So like I completely understand um, where this game is coming from in terms of that. But I would also say that it could use some quality of life improvements. Now, whether that is earning a chunk of your health bar back based on um, how, how long you're able to um, avoid taking damage, or maybe giving you infinite stamina bar for successfully performing a certain number of counters in a row, anything like that. Just anything to have the game sort of acknowledge and reward the player for, um, you know, progressing in skill and improving in that way would just make it that much better. Um, all in all, I don't think that this is a game that tried to be more than it was. I didn't feel any vibe that said that it was aspiring to be game of the year. This is a very specific sort of game that is made for a specific audience. This is a martial arts action game for fans of those types of movies. And I genuinely would say, if you are a fan of that sort of thing, it might be worth checking out at the very least, just to see how you personally feel playing it. If you can get past the controls and all of that and the difficulty, there is some fun to be had there. And at the end of the day, my experience with it was it just presented a certain a challenge to me that I just wasn't able to overcome. But I'm not going to sit here and punish the game for it and say it's a bad game because I couldn't get through it. Um, Certainly not for the amount of time it took to experience it. I mean, it's like the perfect length for a nice little action-packed jaunt through the martial art genre. So yeah, if it sounds like something that could be up your alley, I would suggest checking it out. But I think that is going to wrap this video up, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you in the next one.